10-inch long print. It was 2 inches wide at the heel and 4 inches wide across at the toes. Long and very narrow, which is indicative of a female Sasquatch. And so it was very long, very narrow, very odd, peculiar looking. And because it was the length, I thought it probably belonged to this person who was sitting in this mud. This mud was very clay and slippery, and there were little frogs jumping all over it. So they had the first rain of the season. They had a mud bath. They had frogs for appetizer, and somebody was out there playing in this mud. It was slippery, it was slimy, and there was no way I would take my clothes off and put my little hoochie down in this mud. And yeah, no, that wasn't going to happen. No shower in sight. There were handprints in here. And by the time when Kevin and Ashley saw this, and they came down further to find me and Rob to tell us about this, other campers they met along the way, they told, and of course the other campers started converging on this area. And luckily they took pictures, some did, others just trampled on the area and ruined a lot of the evidence that was in there. So the handprints, tromped on, never got them. And they were down in the mud. It would have been a great cast.
The other butt print got trampled as well.
Yeah, but it was so cool. Anyway, so yeah. So
where is that area at? Sorry.
It's over in Yakima County.
Oh.
And so, interestingly enough, when you come upon a site like this or a find like this, you absolutely must stop yourself from entering that area. You need to look before you step. You have to have that self-discipline not to rush in and run over there and look at that. Kevin's up on this stump. He sees it. He had the self-discipline to stop. But when word got out that he found this, they all rushed in. And when we got back, they were already setting up casting on the outer periphery. And Peter was doing that. And people were taking pictures and milling around. And I've got pictures of somebody else's boot. It's right next to that. They stepped on the handprint that was there. And so all that evidence was gone. So that's where these little flags come in to play. I would suggest you can get these at any hardware store. You can clip them off. You'll see some around here. If you're in the forest, keep them long. If you're out on a mud flat like this, you can just have small ones. But when you have a find, you can just poke them in the ground, and then that will stop anybody from walking in there. If we had 6 dozen of these that day, we would have used them all.
No.
It's
twice.
It was amazing. All of the stuff that was there was amazing. But we had one chance to collect the information and the data, and we screwed it up. So, but because we know better now, right? Hopefully, we'll get another opportunity to come across a big scene like this, and we can investigate it a little bit differently and more thoroughly.
Those flags are also good for marking a find. That gentleman from Alaska that just left, he was saying that he found a print, went back to the truck to get his casting material, and couldn't find it.
True.
So if you could mark it just for your own sake, that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, there was a 6-toed print in here, on the outer part of this. This individual had 6 toes. It had the mid-tarsal break. It had the great width and the smaller heel. It was awesome. And I didn't realize I had even taken a picture of it with all this going on, but there was this beautiful picture. And I'm like, oh, I got the 6-toed print. We went back later to try and find that 6-toed print twice. Couldn't find it. I was like, I want that cast. Where is it? So we're going back, and hopefully that little 6-toed print person will be back over there, and I'll get that cast.
Maybe it's going to be a little bigger this year.
It sounds like there's a family of six-toed individuals that frequent that area, because there's another investigator that goes over there, and he has pictures of different sizes of six-toed. Okay, so anyway, so we have something that unusual has occurred. We want to gather a team. If you've got a big area and you've got additional people with you, use your resources. Everybody's got talents. Use your resources. If you have somebody that is really proficient in taking photos, get that person to start documenting. If it's too big, cordon off sections and then assign people sections. Give them note cards. If you have your little forensics kit with you and you're the leader, then you're going to have these little cards, and you can give each person a couple of cards, cordon off a section, and that's what they're investigating. You'll want the date, the time, who's doing the investigation. They document their findings. They must photograph all of their findings so that you can collect this data later, and then you can take it home and process it, right? Like I said, there's no do-overs. Once you start collecting samples and you start like casting is very messy, and you'll ruin whatever else is around there. So you have one chance when it's fresh and you found it to start documenting this information and gathering specimens. So I keep those in my little forensics kit. I've got a magnifying glass. I've got measuring devices. I've got envelopes of different shapes and sizes. If you're collecting hair samples, and that butt cast did have hair samples in it, you put them in an envelope. Do not lick the envelope, because now your DNA is on there. You want to use gloves and tweezers. All right? And I keep alcohol prep pads, because then you can clean your tweezers in between too. You can collect your hair samples with your tweezers, put them in your envelope, don't lick it. You can peel it and stick it. Don't let the maid get a hold of your envelope. That's what happened at our house. The housekeeper came in and evidently looked in the envelope to see if she should toss it, and the hair disappeared.
Oh, no.
So I was like, Kevin! I stayed up, and luckily there was more hair. I was so upset though, wasn't I? And I collected more hair samples then. Thank God I didn't throw any of the mud away. That was very important, because I had just started knocking it off, because it sat there for over a week drying, this mud. And then when I started knocking it off and I started noticing hair striations in the legs on that cast, I was like, whoa, this is whoa.
It's also important to note that there's scent in that mud, whether it's horse people or elk or something else, and it's very interesting to bird dogs. So if you've got dogs around, keep the mud that you're collecting, if you're saving for looking at later, keep it away from dogs, because they'll mess it up.
Yeah, you don't want anybody in there. You don't want to eat in there. You want to keep it as pristine as possible. But in the forensics kit, because I always carry food, I don't go anywhere without food, so I have granola bars, but I would never eat it over my evidence. These little tablets are towels, believe it or not. You can put this in water and it puffs into a towel to clean your hands, and I've got sanitation wipes too. Magnifying glass, a whistle if you need to get somebody's attention. I've got flashlights. I've got pill bottles. I took my old pill bottles, I washed them out with soap and water and let them dry, and then just put the lid on them. And then I found a great use for chopsticks, disposable chopsticks. How many of you go and get these things I never use them. I'm not that capable, but I was like, oh, I can collect a stool sample with this. I could put my little gloves on that are in here. Put my gloves on. I can get out my little chopsticks, and I can collect a stool sample in here. And then put the lid back on, and these are disposable, and then you get them all the time. So new use for these. Don't throw them away anymore. and your pill bottles. Wash them out and put them in your forensics kit. I have pens, pencils, markers, because you want to label all of your evidence samples. You want to label the outside envelope with what's in there. I have a ledger so I can document as well, besides my cards. Disposable gloves, you can get those at the hardware store as well. And I like clean, happy hands, so I have my Huggies. All right, so that's kind of the basics of my forensics kit, and you can add more to it. So when you are actually working with a group of people, you want to listen to what each other are talking about, what their thoughts are, because we are all not going to agree on what we're finding, who it could possibly be, who made this, who the culprit was. Everybody's going to have a different theory. So just listen, document everything. Because once you have these hypotheses and you're gathering all this evidence, once you start processing it, you can start tossing out different theories. This doesn't work. These are the facts. You're going to go off of the facts. And because you're so ethical, remember, you're only going to go with the facts. It's not what somebody else thinks it might be or could possibly. What do the facts tell you? This could have been a woman that stripped down and sat in the bud with her at least 2 to 3 of their 3 children. I think I said from the very beginning, there is either it's a woman with 2 or 3 kids, or it's possible Sasquatch. Because I couldn't in my head think, why would a woman come out here in the middle of nowhere, strip down, play in the mud? Okay, well, I guess there are people that will, strip down and be in the forest, and nudist colonies and stuff, but I'm like, eh. So the first thing I did was said, we're casting this. And we went back, grabbed a quick lunch, grabbed up our casting material, and Kevin and I went back with Rob. Did Rob go back then? Anyway.
He helped me extract it.
Yeah, and we went back and casted it. It took the rest of the afternoon. We had to cover the entire cast. We collected ferns and a piece of wood that we found laying around. We covered it from any other water, anybody trampling on it. Left it there overnight, went back the next day to dig it out of the mud. And another camper, Anita, for some reason, had this big piece of vinyl in the bottom of her car, and so she gave that to us so we could put it on there. It weighs like 60 pounds, so it was a big process. And so they put it on, dug it out, put it on there, and then brought it home. So once you're committed to an investigation, you need to follow it through. And then just use the facts to determine to decrease the hypotheses and have a possible determination of who left what. Yes?
Okay, so you just, after you carefully documented and all that, as far as pouring the plaster in?
Yes.
So you just mix the plaster up and start pouring it in?
Well, so there was supposed to be a casting class, and there's not. So just real quickly, I'll let you know what we do. I go to a hardware supply store, building supply store in Fife, and I get hydrocal. That is a nice, smooth material to use for casting. You can also get dental stone off of Amazon. It's more expensive. I can get a 50-pound bag of hydrocal for about $26. I take it home and I put it in 1-gallon Ziploc baggies.
Double bag it.
Yeah, double bag it. It's powdery, it's messy, but there's a good reason to double bag it. And then we carry little bottles of water. We have them in the car all the time, and I have some under the back for emergency, but we use it for this too. And then you can actually put the water into that baggie and mix it. You make it pancake thick. Yes?
Cut it in half. You got a 1-fold baggie. Put half of it in the second bag, because you can't mix it all. You can't mix a whole 1 gallon.
Everybody has a different technique. And it does depend on the size. It depends on the size of the cast too. We were mixing it as fast as we could, and I don't think I was mixing it half at that time. I don't remember, but we were trying to mix it as fast as we could to get it in there before it started setting up to reduce ripples and stuff. And it's true, you don't need a whole gallon of this if you're going to do just a little print. So if his technique is to cut it in half, that's great. That's awesome. But then you can, once you mix it in there and you get it nice and smooth, no lumps, pancake consistency, then you can open it up. And then you can actually, if there's detail that you want to capture, you don't just pour it in there. You actually, with your gloved hand, do a splatter on the base, on the bottom of the mud, so you're not ruining any ridges or a detail that's in that material. So you do the splatter to cover it, and then you gently start pouring in the rest of it. He and I were mixing as fast as we could, and we even ran out of water and had to use stream water at one point. But the main thing is pancake consistency, no lumps, and try not to ruin the detail. You don't have to go beyond the cast, the impression. You don't have to cast the outer perimeter, but you do want to get as much detail around the ridges, okay, as possible. It needs to be covered. It needs to be set there to cure. They can break very easily if they're thin. We actually put sticks in the middle of ours and later learned that those will rot over time. And so they thought you should use a little metal ties around this chain link fence. You can buy a package of those and you can place those in your casting material for reinforcement, and those never rot. We also learned, which was great, when you are cleaning it, you don't want to scrub your cast. You want to actually wash it. You can leave some of this other debris, makes a nice contrast. Or if you've already scrubbed it clean and it's nice and white and you want to bring out detail, you can use concentrated coffee, leftover coffee, and paint it onto the brush. You always want to seal one side, leave the back side unsealed so moisture can continue to escape. Otherwise it will just rot, okay, and get soft. This is a great cast of a partial print. This is just a quick story. I think that we need to finish up here. But Kevin and Anita were out on a night walk once, and they had company. They were being followed by some forest folks and had a great time. They came home that night. It was after midnight. And they were telling me they were so excited about this. And I said, well, we need to go back and we need to look for prints. We need to find evidence. So we went back and we got out of the car. And he had told me that, he felt at one point they were being paralleled, but he felt like the possibility of one of these forest folks is going to be between he and Anita in the car, and he didn't want that to happen, so he reached in and took his little flick, the thing that unlocks the car, and he used that. So with that information, I was like, well, if you felt like that was that close, when I got out of the car, I started looking at the ground immediately. They went off to the forest where they had heard these individuals walking. And so I happened to come across this great print. And I was like, hey, you guys, they had just walked over it. Luckily, they didn't step in it. And I was like, hey, did you guys see this? And they were like, no, what is it? I was like, look at these toes. The great toe is 2 inches wide. So right there, that told me that is outside the normal range of a human toe for a great toe. That'd be a pretty fat toe, right? But from side to side, it was 2 inches. This was a clump of mud that was stuck up that squished between the toe. Second toe has a scar on it right here, and the third toe is over here. We didn't get the fourth and the fifth.
Is that the proper name, the great toe?
That's my toe,
Oh.
the great toe. It's the great toe.
You don't just call it a big toe, right?
The golden great toe. Kevin actually took his shoes off at that time and put his foot right behind these toes. All 5 of his toes fit within these 3 toes. So,
And I wear 11 and a half.
yeah.
Wow.
So again, that was another great piece of investigation because his whole foot fit right within these toes. And you can look at these if you want to. There's that great toe, the bud splay, and the next toe with a scar, and a little splay, and a 3rd toe.
So how long do you wait for the plaster cast?
Depends
to
on the
set?
depth. So and the conditions. You know, if it's raining and it's still moist in the air, you're gonna cover it and leave it longer. We left this overnight and didn't go back until after breakfast, I think, right? And
Oh, that
the
one.
butt.
Something like this, probably
Yeah.
an hour
Yeah.
Oh.
in
Yeah.
normal conditions.
Yeah,
It
but
doesn't take long. at all.
depends on the depth and and then and you've got to be careful because if you don't, and you got to shovel around it, dig around it, take that clump of mud with you, and then you let it sit for anywhere from 3 to 7 days, depending on the size and the depth of the mud.
So spade too. You need a spade.
Yeah, a little shovel, something. You've got to be able to get it out of there. Yes.
You know, you're really correct about keeping the dogs
That's right,
away.
that's right.
Yes.
'Cause
No,
down in Southern Oregon, where my great grandpa homesteaded, there's been a clan down there, and every time we'd get out of the car, and my other Jack Russell would just make a beeline and just obliterate all the tracks
Yeah.
before I
Oh,
could.
yeah.
Yeah.
It happened to us all the time up here.
What-
I love Gabby. I completely love Gabby. She was my girl. I love her still. But yeah, she just would go right through
He's
it.
more of a little gentleman. He doesn't go unless he's invited.
She was my little diva.
Yeah.
This is a quick picture. I know there's another class you probably want to get to. This is a great example of a poorly taken picture. This is a cast, but the problem with this picture are the shadows. So you don't really get a good sense of where the toe ends down here, and the ruler is off. If this is the back of the heel,
Oh,
look,
yeah.
you're lost. So you've really got to make sure you're lining up your ruler and not casting a shadow on what you're trying to film. This is a better example of the same cast. This is the same one because of, you can tell by the landmarks. You can see how the heel flares out away from our foot. The heel flares out. It's not straight back like a human. And you can see the toes in this. So this one was taken more down without all of these shadows. And that's one of the thing in forensics. And when you're taking pictures of evidence, take it from your point of view. Lean forward, straight down, take the picture. You need to watch the sun, the shadows. You can always get down and take closer, but start up here and work your way down. When you're setting a boundary, start on the outside perimeter and work your way into the fine so you're not stepping on and ruining evidence. And like I said, I would love to have that hand cast, and I would love to have the knees, but we just did not have enough hydrocal with us, so we had to leave them. There was no going back. Yeah. And then this is just a really pretty picture of a tree structure that we found. We were just driving along an old Forest Service road, and I said, "Stop! Go back! There's some odd trees in there." And there were how many trees around this one?
Oh, there must have been 10 to 12.
And these trees were all pushed in. They're still growing. They're still in the ground, but they were all pushed in around this one main tree. And they were how tall? 30-some feet tall, you think?
40 at
40
least.
feet
They were
tall.
absolutely-
And that was unusual. And then next to it was one of those big asterisks with all those.
Right
it
below
was
it.
right below it on the side. It was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I don't know why a human would go in there and try and push over these 30 to 40 foot tall trees and all on this one, but somebody did, because there's no way they all grew that way. No, not possible.
We were out digging apaws down by Chiloquin, Oregon, which is like a little carrot. It's a wild carrot. And behind us, we heard this big crack. And one had pushed over a snag. And it was real easy to tell because it was grayed out at a 45-degree angle. And we looked back there, and one was crouched right by there, and the crouching height must have been 6 feet at least. It was like, I think he wants us to leave.
You know, I've had the pleasure of seeing forest folks for several times, and every time I see one, I think, okay, I'm going to do this differently next time, and then I see something, and I'm like, why didn't I speak to it? Dang it!
Like,
one of these days, I'm going to remember to say hello.
Buck fever.
All right. So, like I said, hydrocal is great. Snow print wax and dental stone you can get off of Amazon.
Thank you.
Don't be in a rush to analyze all your data and evidence until you've collected it all and you can actually go through it methodically. Don't rush to judgment. There's going to be at least a definitive answer one way or the other once you look at all your evidence. Go with the facts. It's going to be yes, it was a forest person, no, it wasn't a forest person, or you may just not even know what it is, because there's other things out here in this forest other than humans, bear, cougar, squirrels, forest people. Let me see. Evidence can come in lots of different ways. It can be physical evidence. You can use what you see, what you photograph, what you videotape. It's all considered evidence. So if somebody says, oh, we don't collect evidence, well, as soon as you are seeing it and you're photographing it, you're now collecting evidence. It's what you do with it later was different. If you want to send it off to a lab and you want to pay for DNA or you want to pay for analysis, that's great. That's different. If you're here to scientifically prove something, then you're going to approach this differently. If you want it for your own collection and you want to share with like-minded people, then it's yours. It's fun.
Do you have any idea how much it costs to get things sent off?
I've heard numbers, but I've never actually looked into it.
How
I've
long
heard
is a piece of string?
It's probably in the hundreds.
there for printing, like fingerprints. There are people that actually do it for free. Well, not fingerprints, hair samples rather, hair samples. But they can't tell you what it is. They'll just say it's undetermined if they don't have anything to match it up to. So that's hair samples. Sorry. Okay, so I have a DNA kit, or not. Oh, see, here I go, DNA kit. I have DNA, but there is DNA in here because I just touched it. All right, so I have a forensics kit that I put together that I'm going to give to one of you. Kevin just gave you a ticket, and so this will at least get you started. You can just tuck it under your seat of your vehicle or in your backpack. It's not that heavy, and there's a couple snack bars in there too. Never eat in your field of investigation, but you might want to take a break, step aside, have a granola bar so you've got a little snack in there.
And you don't have to use a stir stick because you've got those
The Ziploc, and you've got your hands.
Yes,
just on the outside.
Perfect.
But you're still going to get casting material.
Don't wear anything.
And there's a garbage bag in there too, so you can put all your garbage. Never leave anything in the forest. Leave no trace, right? All right. Let's see. Who's feeling lucky?
Hopefully.
This one. 4, 2, 1. Yeah, there you go. Awesome.
Yay.
All right, and you even have a pair of these in there.
Thank you.
Enjoy your forensics kit.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Nice to meet all of you. If we had more time, we could talk more, but I think you've got another class to get to, everyone. So have a great day in the forest.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy.
So much.